Morning all, let's have another look at a game from the very young Kasparov, just when he was 13 years old this time. This was played in Wattignies in France, 1976. Wattignies is a commune in the Nord department of northern France. It lies southwest of the Lille conurbation. So he was playing in what was the predecessor to the World Youth Chess Championship, which is a competition for girls and boys under the age of 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 and 18. The first predecessor to this was the Cadet Championship, which started unofficially in 1974 in France for players under 18. The 1975 and 76 editions were also for under 18, and in 1976 it featured young players such as Kasparov and Julian Hodgson. So Julian Hodgson, by the way, is the person who's really put a lot of work in the Trompovsky variation, d4, knight f6, bishop g5. But okay, so in 1976, Wattignies, Kasparov was playing Adnan, Sendur, who's now an international master. So let's see, e4 from Garry, d6. We have Piet's defense emerging here. G6 here from black, knight f3, bishop g7. Now Kasparov's choice is actually the main move, bishop e2 here. It's actually the main move in this position. Black castles, white castles. Now the main move is actually c6 in this position here, c6. That provides d5 potentially for the knight. If for example c6, e5, I think this is fine for black, this kind of position. It should be fine. There's also other moves like bishop g4. That's another popular move, knight c6. But in the game we see what maybe is technically a mistake already from the young Adnan Sendur. So we're putting on the Kibitzer here. This next move, knight bd7, it does seem a bit overly provocative to allow white to play e5 here. Maybe black's thinking that white's pawn is going to be weak if e5 is played, but Kasparov does dare play e5, and probably black's best is to play knight e8, a humble retreat. Doesn't look that attractive, but could continue perhaps with c6 later and get the knight back into the centre. But Adnan played d takes e5, and after d takes e5, this is now very, very difficult. Knight e8 is much worse now because of this d file opened up. For example, if knight e8 now, then actually the move e6 is very powerful here. After f takes knight g5, what does black do exactly about e6? He can't move the knight, it's pinned to the queen now. And if he plays rook f6, then actually knight ce4, and this is just winning the exchange. So this will be all over. So black is now forced to play knight g4 here, whether he wants to or not. Knight g4 is like the only move to stay in the game. e6 though is still played. So here, if f takes e6, which wasn't played, then knight g5, and there's a threat of knight takes e6 and bishop g4. So black's in trouble here if f takes. So plays actually one of the better moves, knight d e5. Kasparov takes the queens off, rook takes. Now knight b5 apparently may be the strongest, most critical continuation here, just to expose that c7 is a big problem in this particular position. On knight b5, if bishop takes e6, then knight takes c7, and this is very, very pleasant for white, this position here. Horrible double pawns. White's got the bishop pair. It's better for white. But if we go back in this position now, Kasparov actually took, instead of playing knight b5, he took on e5 first. After knight takes e5, here he played knight b5, and perhaps black's best, and black might be okay with this, is just to play bishop takes e6 in this position, to offer the c7 pawn and the double pawns. But here, okay, white's only a tiny bit better. Black's central control is quite good. The rooks are quite good. It's not too bad for black. It's a minimal advantage. But in the game, actually, after knight b5 in this position, black didn't take on e6, but played c6. Now we see knight c7, and black doesn't want to give up the exchange, so rook b8. And now we see f4, which just appears to be winning a piece. But this is actually a nice little tactical trick from black. The problem is, after the tactical trick, it still kind of is dangerous for black, as we're about to see. So where can the knight go? It's actually stranded on e5 here. Hasn't got c4, hasn't got g4, can't go back. So it goes to g4, and you might think, well, isn't this the end of the game, just losing a piece? Bishop takes g4, but black now has this resource, this check, after king h1, bishop b6. And that knight is now stranded. So it looks as though this cheeky play from black might actually be okay. But here we see a kingside attack progress with f5. So what can black actually do here? Well, he takes the knight in this position, and now we see f takes g6, which is very dangerous. How can black react to this? Well, in this position, f takes g6 was played. If bishop takes e6, then possibly best is just taking here and then taking on e6. And white's a bit better by about half a pawn from an engine view. This is a bit better for white. So in this position, okay, f takes g was played instead, which might be slightly worse than bishop takes e6, because now Kasparov plays bishop h6, and there's a potential, mating net here which has been formed. This bishop is now away from the king for the moment, so it tries to return back to help defend some dark squares. Now rook ad1, and here black really is forced. There's only one move really to stay in the game. If black wanted to stay in the game here, it looks a very meek thing to do, but rook e8. It's unpleasant though, this position. Black is in a bind here, can't move his rook anywhere, his bishop's stranded. For example, c3 to blunt the bishop on e5, and actually white can even play a very scary looking move in this position, rook d7. This is just a variation which could have occurred, and it's still difficult for black. If that rook's going to be tolerated, well, if it's taken, then white could end up with a nice position like this, with a big pawn on d7 to win back the exchange. And this is going to be nice for white, even though it's opposite coloured bishops. This is just a huge pawn on d7 in this position, if that was taken. But anyway, black made things a lot quicker and easier for white, for Kasparov, by taking on d1. After rook takes d1, there's a threat just mating on d8. The bishop goes to d6 here, but alas, the bishop is not covering these squares. This bishop can't help. The back row is disconnected here, and we just see rook f1 simply threatening a mate on f8, to which black is now defenseless. Oh dear. So a crushing finish there from the 13-year-old Garry Kasparov against Sendur, who was later to become an international master. Hope you enjoyed that. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.